In addition to artists, NARM recognizes visionary music executives every year. This year we are recognizing Tom Silverman from Tommy Boy Entertainment with our Independent Spirit Award. Tom has worked with artists such as Naughty by Nature and Queen Latifah and many other artists in the hip-hop, new wave, and punk rock communities. He has been a unique visionary, creating the New Music Seminar and done so many great things as a really strong voice for the independent music community.
I'm Tom Silverman. I'm the founder of Tommy Boy Music Entertainment, and also the founder of the New Music Seminar, which was at one point the biggest music conference in the world. And Tommy Boy is one of the pioneers in the hip-hop movement. Back in 1981, we launched the career of Africa Bambaataa, who is considered the godfather of hip-hop. And we helped break hip-hop around the world with artists like De La Soul, Queen Latifah, Naughty by Nature, House of Pain, Digital Underground, and Coolio, just to mention a few.
Now you're at NARM receiving an award.
Yeah, they're giving an award out now called the Independent Spirit Award. And tonight I'm going to be the recipient of that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's talk music. Where has it been and where is it going? I know that's a big question.
Well, music itself is, everyone can make music now for the first time, so everyone's a music maker. Everybody who buys a Mac has GarageBand, so they can be a music maker. And music making equipment has never been cheaper, if not free. Almost every computer you could probably download free software to make music yourself. So music making accessibility is almost ubiquitous at this point. That allows a lot of music to be made. And what we've seen happening is more and more music is being made, and now there are new technologies such as TuneCore and Reverb Nation, CD Baby, that allow artists or music makers, they may not even be artists, to release it commercially and sell it on iTunes and Amazon and other places for almost no money, which means it's almost a virtual free-for-all, so that anyone who can make music, no matter how good or how bad, can release it themselves. And so there's a big glut of music out now. There's over 100,000 albums released last year in America, and just 20 years ago that number was under 20,000 albums released, because they were physical, they had to be pressed on vinyl, and it was much more difficult. You had to go into a recording studio and record with real musicians. It was very expensive. There was a high barrier to entry. Now there's no barrier to entry. So just like in photography, on PhotoBucket or Flickr, everybody has their photos up everywhere, and everybody's tweeting photos back and forth, but that doesn't make them professional photographers. There's a lot of amateur musicians that are out there in the marketplace, and that sort of makes it a little bit more difficult for developing artists to break through that glut. So let's say if every year there's 50 needles in a haystack, and the music industry has always gone out to look for those needles using our special magnetic needle finder. Now the haystack has gotten 10 times bigger, but there's still the same amount of needles in there, so it's just harder for us to find them. So it's great because so much music is available, but it's not great because most of that music is crap, and the music that's really good is harder to find, so we need more tools, web tools and other kinds of tools, and trusted advisors to find great music. Things like Pandora are helping, and a lot of new things that are coming into the market now over the next few years will really help people discover great music in a new way. The last 10 years haven't been as great for development of new American artists, but I think that's going to start turning around very soon.
So do you think instead of going to a club and listening to a new act, you actually go to Pandora and say, okay, I want to listen to Queen Latifah-like music?
Yeah. Whatever your favorite kind of record is, you put in your favorite artist or whatever you want, and then it'll populate that with things you know and things you don't know. And the things you know you may end up liking more than the things you don't know. And Pandora has already become, I think, the #2 recommender of new business to Amazon and iTunes. So they're sending a lot of people to buy new music already. And I hear similar things about Spotify, which is a streaming site that's enormously popular in 7 countries in Europe. It's supposed to launch in America.
It seems like the internet is the new way of music.
Well, it's not. It's a new way. It's a new conduit to discover music and to listen to music. If you're into the internet and you're savvy with all that, it's easy, and eventually it's all going to move to your smartphone, and your smartphone will be able to carry all your music or access all your music from the cloud beyond. So really, the last 5 to 10 years have been a year of technology changing the entire tenets of how the music business operates, and that's very exciting. I'm not sure that it's really changed music that much. In fact, I don't think it really has changed music that much. And you know, in 1981, when hip-hop became a big genre through the 80s, it was a whole new genre of music. That's exciting to me. You know, when rock and roll started in 1954 to 56, that must have been really exciting. When jazz first started or when blues first started, that's really exciting. When a new genre happens, you know, or punk, you know, launches, or even disco, whatever it is, compared to what it was before, it's a sea change in music, you know, in a creative thing. But this isn't a creative thing in terms of musical creativity. It's really changing. What does the pipe look like? How do we consume music? Our relationship to music is changing. And maybe that's going to allow different kinds of music to break. Like, an example is turntables. Turntables were record players before, but then they became an instrument themselves. And Africa Bambaataa was one of the guys who took turntables and played records that were supposed to be played at 33, at 45, and he quick cut records up and played 4 seconds from each one and made breaks longer, and he did it all in real time, and it was a very exciting thing, and it led to turntablism, and the entire hip-hop movement came from misusing a technology like that. So we're just inventing all of these new technologies now. We need a little bit more time to misuse them and create something new and exciting with them. I mean, Leo Fender, who invented the electric guitar and amplifier, the big thing that made that build rock and roll around that sound was the distortion of the guitar, of the pickups, and the amplifier, and that gave the sound of the guitar a special sound that really defined what rock and roll was. And if it wasn't for that mistake, maybe there wasn't rock and roll. Reggae was sort of a mistake of taking a beat and flipping it backwards, and it became a whole sound. So I think, you know, being able to play with things and misuse them is the way we discover new things. So all the technologists that are building all of these new tools, they'll have to be built, and then they'll have to be abused. And when they're abused, we're going to get some really interesting musical new approaches, and that's what I'm looking forward to coming. The next decade, we should see some of that.
At what age did you decide you wanted to be in the music business? And how did you start?
I used to play guitar in high school, and then in college I worked at the college radio station. I was the music director for 3 years. And then I decided to give it up and go get my graduate degree in environmental geology. And then I decided that maybe I would start a newsletter for DJs. My old roommate from college went and had a job at one of the music trades doing the charts. And he said, wow, disco's getting really big. Why don't we do a disco tip sheet for DJs? And I said, oh, let's do that. So I quit graduate school and moved to New York and set up Dance Music Report, which was a big, one of the biggest music industry tip sheets for DJs at that time. And that's sort of how I got into the whole thing.
And do you have any advice for children that want to be in the music business?
Sure. If they want to be in the business or they want to be musicians?
Either.
Well, if they want to be, most of them want to be musicians, and if they want to be musicians, they should try to do something nobody else is doing. The real key is to differentiate yourself from everyone else. If I tell you there's 100,000 albums out there and that there's 5 million artists with MySpace pages, that's way too many. And if you're going to go sound like your favorite artist, you're not going to be successful. You have to have a crazy, different, standout approach in something, in your lyrics, in your look, in your story, what you stand for, in your sound. Something, you have to own something that has to be yours. So that's my recommendation for anybody who's a musician. And for people in the business, be entrepreneurial. Don't think about getting a job in a big company. There are a lot of opportunities to start your own businesses, like I had to do. I couldn't get a job with a record company. I started a newsletter, and then, you know, I took a $5,000 loan from my parents, and I started a record company because I already had a newsletter that was reaching DJs, and I happened to find the right thing through my connections with the newsletter, and, you know, hip-hop blew up out of it, and that rising tide lifted my boat. So it was a beautiful thing. So I've had, you know, a great career, and I think karma has been favorable to me.
Jim Urie is receiving our Presidential Award for Sustained Executive Achievement. Jim is the president and CEO of Universal Music Group Distribution and represents some of the biggest artists and some of the biggest labels in the world, artists such as Taylor Swift and Vince Gill and Bon Jovi and Colby Calais and dozens and dozens of others. Jim has worked for some of the biggest music executives himself, and he has been a leader and truly a stalwart for NARM and for the music industry with many great ideas and initiatives, and we are really thrilled to be recognizing him for his career achievement.
I'll tell you something, there's no one who has been successful in the music business that I've ever met, and I've been doing this for 30 years, that hasn't worked their ass off. The idea that the music business is easy and it's fun and you don't have to work that hard is nonsense, and I don't care if you're a performer or a stagehand or an executive at a record company. It's really, really, really hard work. If you want to be a performer, of course, if you want to be an artist, you have to follow whatever your heart is telling you about what kind of music you want to make and what it is that you want to say with your music. And if you want to be an executive or in another part of the music business, it's a passion business, and your passion needs to drive your dedication to the business.
Let's talk about peer-to-peer sharing.
The music business has been ravaged by peer-to-peer file sharing over the last 10 years, and in the last 5 years, of course, it's gotten much worse. Our CD sales are down 55% through the end of last year, and are down 17% this year. A lot of the digital offerings that should be taken off are not, because at the end of the day, the business is competing with free, which is not fair. So we need the government and we need the internet service providers to step up and block this file sharing software so that the artists, the songwriters, the musicians can earn money for their work and earn a fair wage, continue to create music. Music is the #1 intellectual property of the United States, and I think is the #1 voice for the United States out to the world.
So Taylor's right behind you. She is one of your artists.
Taylor is sort of our company sweetheart. She played this convention 4 years ago. It's the first time any of us saw her, and she is the best-selling artist in the business since then. Her 2 albums have sold combined 10 million copies in the United States, and I can't remember how many singles, but it's in the many millions. And not only that, she's absolutely as nice as she seems to be when you see her on television.